Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brett Campbell Show. In today's episode, we talk with actual full transparency, a client of ours, a charitable client of ours actually. We talk with the co-founders of Livin, which is a charity focused around mental health, and their tagline is "It ain't weak to speak," and I love it. I love that tagline immensely. I got the guys into the studio. Well, Sam. He zoomed in from his computer. He's over in America at the moment, in LA. But I got Casey into the studio. We had a bit of a three-way happening here. First of its kind, actually, on the Brett Campbell Show. So there's some highlighting news. But we talked about a number of things. We talked about, one, how Livin was created and how them as an actual business is as a not-for-profit, how they've been able to generate income and get this message out to more people. We talked about why it was created, and it came from a death of one of their best friends. And it was literally sort of born out of the desire just to generate a little bit of funding for the family, but it became something much bigger. So we talk about that. We talk about mental health as well. If you are someone who has been affected, or you know someone who's been affected, which is pretty much everyone on this planet right now. I share a couple of personal stories in there as well around my connection to mental health and how I've been able to handle it and navigate my way through. So we all share some very personal stories there. And if you are someone, in all truthfulness, you suffer with anxiety, you suffer with any form of depression, whether you think it might be mild or you might think it might be a lot more severe. This episode, I highly encourage you to sit down, go and make yourself a nice coffee or a green tea, or even a peppermint tea. A peppermint tea is a nice one. Sit down, listen to this episode. If you get value from it, I highly recommend you please share this episode with someone that you know. We truly do. Claxon have partnered with Livin, and we work on their e-commerce store to help drive sales for them, so this message can be seen and heard by more people. So whatever you can do to get this podcast out to people who you think will benefit, please do it. And also, if you haven't, please head over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. Appreciate that immensely. And also tag me on Instagram, so you can take a little screenshot, upload it to your Instagram, tag myself at Brett Campbell Official. Also tag at Livin, LIVIN.org. Like I got someone behind the camera, they're telling me the .org. I already got that wrong. But make sure you do a bit of tagging there and let us know that you're watching it. But more importantly, please, if you are someone and you're struggling right now, please know that it is you're not weak to speak. Okay, so that tagline there, "It ain't weak to speak," is reach out. Hey, send me a DM, jump into my DMs, let me know how you're going. I'm here to try and help as many people as we possibly can. And sometimes it's just a good old conversation can make things not as big as what they might perceive to be for ourselves. So this is a really personal episode, close to my heart. And I really hope you get value out of it as well. So please share as many times as you possibly can. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode with the co-founders of Livin. We've got Casey and Sam. Casey and Sam, mate, welcome to the studio. First episode in the studio, I must say.
Wow. Privilege.
Thanks
for having us.
Thanks for having us, mate. Appreciate it, Brett. Very looking forward to whatever we talk about today.
So we're going to talk about baking and how to crochet new rugs.
Beautiful.
We'll test you on that a little bit later. But, mate, appreciate you, Sammy, coming in all the way from, where are you? West Hollywood at the moment?
Yeah, I'm in West Hollywood, mate, in Los Angeles. Beautiful sunny day there, but can't do too much out there at the moment.
Yeah, crazy lockdowns over there right now. Give us the quick download of that. What's the consensus look like over there?
Well, for the very first, I think for at least the next 2 weeks, most things, it's just still essential things. Grocery stores, doctors, all those places are open. Curbside pickup for the most part. But for everything else, no restaurants are open, no bars. The beach was okay last weekend because of the Memorial Day weekend, but nothing's really releasing as of this stage.
It's crazy, isn't it? When this whole thing happened, 2 months ago now, really it sort of started to take, it might even be 9 weeks now. It's gone so fast. What were your sentiments of, fuck, what's happening here? What's going on?
I'm always a bit of a skeptic, so I always thought, it wasn't as bad as what they were saying.
Yeah.
And then it came to a point where my wife was just watching the news 24/7. And then I thought, shit, this might be as bad as they're saying. And then we put on a news band in the house. All we watch now is the NRL channel. And we have laughs every night and pretend it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's been a weird one. It's something that no one has ever experienced.
Yeah.
And that's why there's no book on how to act, behave, how to pivot your business, how to do anything.
Yeah.
It's just completely ambiguous times. And
Yeah, it was crazy. When I first sort of, very similar, I instead of saying the skeptic, I'd like to say I'm probably more of the optimist. You know, I'm going to look for the positive of, this is just a little bit of a wake-up call for everyone, but very similar. I've never watched so much news in a short period of time than I had in my entire life. Like, it was literally, I was watching every news channel, and I'm just like, oh my God, I seen how quickly it was that we could be mentally affected by the narrative that was being spat out there on the network. And I mean, Sammy, you're over in the States, so you would have had access to the, I'm sure you watch the news channels over there. They're amplified by 100 times, right?
Yeah, it's just constantly just negative. There's just so much fear in people around here, especially. Even, I mean, if they do release things, I don't think we'll see a big influx of people just going back out again. There's just so much fear, and I think in the, subconscious, people, while they think it's not really affecting them, I think behind closed doors, it definitely affects, I think, most people.
And to your point, there's no book for it, right? There's no, we haven't ever gone through something like this, so there really isn't no step-by-step process of how we're going to get through it or think through it.
No, definitely. And I suppose we are probably lucky in Australia, or more importantly, the Gold Coast and Queensland. We've been a little bit insulated from it. But Sammy, as you said, fear. I go for a walk along the beach every morning, and a couple of weeks ago, the fear in people's eyes. That wasn't living. Like, people were just sort of surviving, getting through the day. But it's good to see people that fear is slowly diminishing. Yeah. Some people are still scared. You can see it in their eyes, but people are laughing. They're saying hello again.
Yeah.
They're not avoiding you.
We're very moldable, right? And that's what I love about humans as a species. It's like we can, it's that fight or flight method, mentality. It really is true at the core of it. It's the ability where, and I like to consider myself, a pretty smart dude. I've sort of got my head screwed on. I know a thing or two. I don't act out of absolute fear. If there's an explosion, I'm not the guy that's going to go, run. I'll go, hold on a minute. What's this? Where's that coming from? I'll sort of investigate a little bit. So I feel, I've got a certain level of intelligence that is going to be well equipped for something like this, right? And even to the point as I've seen myself and watched myself go through, every feeling and emotion, and, whether it's business, personal life, feeling about how my family is or my friends. And I noticed myself changing, right? And to your point of, I'd be walking, because we live on the beach as well, which I absolutely love. It's probably the thing that got us through this comfortably. I just felt like I was on a holiday every day, to be honest. But when I was walking past people, I was like swerving around, like, oh, better keep our distance. Don't get close to me. And it just changed the whole way you looked at people. And for the first couple of weeks, there wasn't a lot of hello, hey, how you doing? It was more like, shut your mouth, don't talk to me. I've got to get in and out and get back home.
Yeah.
It
brought out some of the bad traits of humans. We're meant to stick together in times like this. We were sort of further apart than what we should have been.
Well, it is that fight or flight, right? And it's every man for himself almost. It's that mentality. Have you seen the documentary? It's called Firefest. No. Did you watch Firefest?
Is that
the documentary, the rave? So they had a big party island.
Yeah.
Ja Rule, and he was sort of the face of it.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, well, look, they long story short, created this massive party, got some, big influencers, Kylie Jenner, etc., to promote it. They pitched this amazing thing. People flew in from everywhere, and they knew weeks leading up to it, it wasn't going to be complete. The accommodation wasn't going to be complete. It was a flop, and people arrived there. They basically kept them some of them locked in the airport, and then, you can't leave, and it's, in the Bahamas, sweltering hot, and then people who do arrive at the venue, there's half-made tents, and there's certain mattresses, and as you've seen the night come closer, the darkness sort of creep in, people just went AWOL, taking people's mattresses and, scavenging. It was just crazy how people can go from, this is going to be the best day of our lives, to an absolute
the biggest party that never really actually happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Scary.
But lads, I've obviously wanted to bring you in here and get you on the show because you guys have a really important, charity business that you guys run, and it's that of Livin. And we have had the opportunity to obviously work with you guys for the last, how long would it be now?
2-3 years.
2-3 years. So for a long time, and it was a decision that myself and Daniel came up with, to do our part and give back to this charity, to what Livin's all about, because we have personal stories attached to this as well, and I think every human being really has one. And I want to talk about that. But we took it on board to say, hey, look, we want to put our hand up and help you guys drive revenue for the charity and do our bit from a charitable perspective. So it's great to finally get you guys in here and have this conversation, and more importantly, have a conversation about the message itself. So who wants to kick off and tell us what's Livin first and foremost?
Case, you go, mate.
Nice handball. That was a nice quick one.
Thanks for the short ball, Sammy. Footy's back on tonight. Can't wait.
The NRL. We'll talk about that soon.
Sorry.
So Livin started in 2013. I can't even believe it, where all those years have gone. Mm-hmm. We lost a great man, Dwayne Lally, my best mate. We met first day of grade 1 to suicide. Dwayne lived with depression and bipolar for a number of years, and the stigma attached kept him quiet, stopped him from accessing support. He felt like he was a burden. But Dwayne, he was a great looking dude. He had a great family, very supportive family, very, very close, great friends, if I don't say so myself. And he was quite successful and also quite tough. He was an Australian champion boxer at a young age. He had this smile that lit up the room. So, outside looking in, he had the perfect life and he had it all going on. But behind closed doors, he fought this battle that he just didn't know how to articulate, and it just sort of pushed him, or it sort of separated him further from what reality really was. And after his tragic passing, we were confronted by the statistics that surround both mental health and suicide, not just in this country but right around the world, and they were alarming. And I still remember it pretty clear to this day. We didn't know what to do. That you never taught about this in school, and it was just, you're so numb and you feel so isolated and alone. So we got together and we knew we had to do something, and initially we didn't know what we were going to do, and that's how Livin was born. We now go around the country delivering education workshops into schools, businesses, sporting clubs, teaching people the basics of the warning signs, the symptoms, empowering people to have those conversations, or where to go to have those conversations, because that's our motto is it ain't weak to speak. We also have the close, which are walking, talking billboards. We're currently sort of independently testing the impact everything that we do have, and early reports suggest that the merch is a wonderful conversation starter that pulls down those barriers and empowers people to have conversations. And then there's our community-based events, which is all about bringing people together, that connection and that community. So that's in a very broad, very basic overview.
Well, when I first found out about Livin, it was through the merchandise, right? It was through the clothing. I was like, fuck, that's a cool logo. Actually, it might have been a sticker on someone's car. So I think it was a sticker on someone's car, and I kept sort of seeing it pop up every so often. And then I seen a bit of the merch. I was like, oh, cool, this is awesome. So love how there's that, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who want to be able to help and create awareness around specific topics. And sometimes, and this is just, if you tie this back into like business and marketing for a second, it's what you've done is you've positioned merchandise, really cool looking, great quality merchandise, as the sort of the carrot to get people and go, hey, there's something more to this. There's a deeper conversation. There's a bigger message around this, which is that whole it ain't weak to speak. So where'd you boys connect? How'd you guys?
We grew up together.
Yeah, right. Case and I have known each other for many years. We've played against each other in competitive football. We were housemates at one stage, and
well, there's a good story there, Sammy.
Who's the dirtiest housemate?
I'll throw Sammy under the bus. Well, Sammy, and I don't mean this in the negative connotation way, but Sammy has OCD, so no one will ever be cleaner than Sammy.
Right.
I used to fuck with him. I'd go into his room and I'd mess his clothes around. It was all colour coordinated. I'd muck him around, hide his remotes, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I used to live in Sam's house when he lived in America last time.
Right.
He'd often come home and visit, and he'd have his own little bedroom to sleep in. But I'd wake up every morning and here he is spooning.
Yeah, I hated sleeping in my
I don't
own
know where
bed,
to
mate.
go with this.
Neither did I. I thought
They were generally after long nights. I'd come home very lonely, but Casey was always there. But yeah, Casey and I have known each other for a number of years, and I guess following on from where Livin started, I remember very clearly after Dwayne's passing, he had his wake, and his family were just so honourable in that, we put shirts together, and it had Dwayne's face on it with a little quote that he loved from a song, and so many people supported buying those shirts at Dwayne's wake, at his celebration of his life. And
What
Dwayne's
made you do
mum
the
and dad.
shirts? Like, what was the purpose behind the shirts?
Well, originally we were going to give the money to the family,
Right.
and they kind of turned around and said, do something with it. And originally we donated to local Headspace here at Southport.
Yeah.
And we love the work Headspace do. They do great work right around the country. But we were kind of at that age where Headspace was too young for us. One more year and we were outside of their scope of work. So we knew we had to create something that sort of catered to a lot more people. And that's kind of how we started. We just started with shirts, selling those.
Yeah.
Each time we'd order more, and it just kind of just naturally sort of turned into this direction. We knew always that we had to educate people.
Yeah.
We had to change the way people looked and understood mental health.
And at that time, no one was really. I mean, we look at it now, and we mentioned it earlier. Time flies, really. I mean, that was 7 years ago this year, and it feels like yesterday. Like we were just selling shirts as just as a way to give back, but also to honour Dwayne's legacy and his life. But then there were people sharing their stories on the back of that. And then that would make us feel better, so we'd do it more, and then it would just keep going and going, and then before we know it, the traction picked up and people were willing to give us events to sell their shirts at. Then we got, we met teachers who were willing to look at the program to put together with us, and Livin certainly wouldn't be where it is today without the community, and I think that's a big testament to what was created at the very forefront of Livin. I think it was that sense of community. I feel like it was just really unique.
We're also probably lucky and I don't, obviously it was not a lucky situation to be in, but lucky at the time it happened is in regards to us starting this with social media. And the fact that we had all these things at our disposal. I've got hay fever today. I can't really think properly. We had it at our disposal, all these things that people 5-10 years ago wouldn't have been able to do or take advantage of. So a lot of our friends growing up, they're playing NRL now. So we could chuck them a shirt or two. They'd put a post up on Instagram and it'd go ballistic. But even more importantly, they would have people engaging with them, sharing their stories. And it kind of it grew from there. And we always knew we had to lead with the brand. Mental health is something that's never been spoken about, always under the rug. So we had to, in a way, try and make it look cool.
Yeah, I love the brand. I love the positioning of it. And you're right. There's a couple of things you said there that resonate as community, right? So with any specific charity, I believe, or any sort of movement, right? Let's not even call it a charity. You're creating a movement in my eyes, right? That's really what this is all about. And there's specific. I actually teach an entire training around how to build an actual movement, and it's actually really interesting when you dig deep into all the different categories and how you do get people to compel to actually be a part of one, to be able to self-select that they're a part of that community, but more importantly, how do you get someone to keep being a part of that community consistently? So, for example, remember when we had the Australian bushfires?
Yep.
Right, that was literally a couple of months ago, right? But that narrative now is sort of, it's behind closed doors so much now. So it's not as out there consistent. Only the do or die people who are committed to that sort of cause is still running and moving it, right?
Yep.
So you can have these highs and lows with any business, with any charity, with any movement. It's the ability. If you look at the biggest movement right now, from my perspective, well, maybe not right at this current second, but I teach on the movement of Donald Trump becoming president, right? So this is definitely in no way, shape, or form political at all, but watching someone, how they come in from relatively, zero understanding about politics from our perspective. Hey, who knows what he knew? But to be able to then grab half the country to love you.
Yep.
right? But keep the narrative more and more and more. You wait till, and you'll see this even more, Sam, living over in America. It is, especially coming up to November. You can learn from what people are doing to keep yourself out there in the market, to keep the narrative happening and consistent. And that's the important thing, I think, with any type of movement, especially what you guys are doing here with Livin and the concept around mental health and it ain't weak to speak. Like that, the goal there is how do every single day we keep that narrative and we keep producing more stories and more and more and more and more stories so it spreads, right? And one is you're obviously doing that with the clothing, which is fantastic. Yeah. It creates a topical conversation. What were some of the evolutions of Livin? So, like, you started in 2013 with a T-shirt with your mate on the front. What was his name, sorry?
Dwayne.
So you had a T-shirt with Dwayne on it, right? And that was just to raise money for his family, but then it sort of turned into something else. What was sort of the evolution of Livin?
It went on to brand, like the brand itself. Then, like, do you mean from the business side, like setting up websites and getting the brands on other shirts?
So more
and
so
looking at
the
merch
journey of what were you guys doing at that time? Were you working? Were you doing anything?
Yeah, so I was
other than spooning each other. What else were you doing?
I was a big spoon, by the way. No, I wasn't. I was the unsuspecting spoon. I was a carpenter. I was also playing footy for Burleigh Bears, just park footy.
Right.
Something I love doing with my mates. Probably played for a little bit too long. Now that it's winter, the bones and the joints ache a little bit more. But that's what I love doing. Yes, that's what I was doing.
And I was at that stage. I was working. Yeah, I was working at Southern Cross Osteria. So I've made a transition I'd just come back from the States. I had I'd spiraled out of control of my life, and I ended up working with my brother-in-law at the radio station, just in sales. And then Dwayne passed in September, and then Case and I were working 2 jobs for a number of years before we got to a stage where we could finally step away from our full-time roles and commit, everything plus the rest to the charity, which it really needed us because it sort of grew so fast and so many people were so willing to support us. And, the shirts went from one shirt to a number of different shirts in a range, and at that time we weren't calling them ranges by any means, but we were just bringing out bits and pieces, and they were selling, and then we were involved in events, and then we might meet
as to how we got the name.
Yeah, how'd you get?
So earlier I said Sam had OCD. It was my birthday one year. So we're sorry, I'll rewind a little bit. We were sitting at Mermaid Tavern one night with his family, and we were talking about what we wanted to do.
Yeah,
we had dinner. It wasn't, we weren't drinking. It was dinner. And there were Dwayne's family, Sam, myself, and Travis were sitting there trying to figure out what we were going to do. And a light bulb moment went off in my head. Sammy, OCD, like he loves a clean house. So I had when I was living in his house when he was in America, I had a birthday party. Dwayne was there, and Dwayne used to like teasing us all. He was good at it, and he said to me, "Let's have a ceiling party." I'm like, "What's a ceiling party?" So he runs inside to the lounge room, grabs the lounge chair and just puts it straight through the ceiling. And before I could even say anything, he's pulled it out and done it again. And then I've come running in. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And he looks at me with the biggest smile on his face. And he said, just living. Right. And then he's run to my room, grabbed the laptop, and he's got him on Skype.
Mm-hmm. Showing the carnage.
And poor Sammy,
back in the States, mate, and I was a bit pissed, but I knew it would get fixed.
Sammy had it together. He held it together, but the next day, like Dwayne, when I sort of calmed down, he's like, mate, I'll fix it tomorrow. He was there at 8 a.m, hungover as hell, crawling through our roof, or through Sam's roof, patching the holes. Yep. And he's throwing out a few expletives because there's installation in the roof. I said, who's living now?
Yeah, that home's got some good memories.
But then Dwayne used to always hashtag just living and living. So
right, okay, so it was a bit of a homage.
Yeah, it just tied in, and it was just a light bulb moment that we had.
And it's so congruent with what it's all about, right? It's you're about mental health and saying it ain't weak to speak and stopping the rates of suicide because, that's something that's and I don't know if it's. Well, it has to have increased due to social media and so forth, but I feel it's certainly something that's always been there. It's just been behind the closet where it was that whole, especially us, growing up. You guys, you're 32, you're similar age.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm 21, and
You wish, mate.
my hair would suggest otherwise. No, so I'm 37. See, when you get over 36, you forget. I think I'm 37.
forget.
So us growing up, it was that, harden up. I remember when I went to my first job, my boss, he'd call me cum face, he'd call me, dick licker, and I'm like, how the fuck do I take this? Like, I was really upset. I'd go home and I'd be crying to my mum. I'm 16 years old, and I'm like, Mum, he's calling me this, and it's the, oh look, sometimes it's, my mum was trying to do the best with what she could, but the advice was just harden up. Just harden up, and I mean now that's just not good enough, right?
Well, yeah, it isn't, but sometimes it is. Sometimes we just have to. Yeah, I don't want to contradict myself here.
It's true. No, you're right. It's circumstantial, right?
Yeah.
If you're bantering around with your mates and say, fucking harden up, mate, that's a different story. But, when you're a 16-year-old boy and you got to, I mean, in saying that, the argument is, well, I did all right out of it. I took it for, I took it as fuel to go, I'll show you as a cum face, mate, So let's talk about the education component to Livin. Like, so you guys traveling around, you're obviously in the States, so I'm curious to find out more about what you're doing over there. But let's talk about first and foremost the education component.
Short ball.
Where did that sort of come from?
Yeah, so the education, mate, and probably the most important part. And I mean, if you take a step back from Livin for a moment and just have a look at everything that we do, it is all based around education. We're trying to empower people to inspire and empower people to learn more and to be more aware. And that all comes through education, through merch, through education programs, whether that's in schools, workplaces or sports clubs, or whether that's at community events. And that could just be, through shared lived experiences. But as far as education goes, I mean, when we set up all this and put it all together, it was just literally a simple website. And then we're like, we've got to get this into a school somehow. And then when we shared our story and told people what Livin was all about, whether we were involved in a touch football comp or whatever, we met a teacher, and Case, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Tim McHenry. He got us involved in his school. He was a HPE teacher, and he was overlooking year 10s at the time. And he's like, well, I reckon I could get you guys into our school to do a talk. And at that time, we didn't really have anything polished. It wasn't really that good, and we really didn't have anything. So we sort of put a few slides together, what we thought Livin was all about, and how we can help and inspire and educate people. He had a look over it, and then we sort of went from there. And I remember Tim and myself, we co-delivered it at his school at Cleveland State High School, just south of Brisbane. And, mate, it just sort of went from there, and then we refined it, got feedback from teachers. They wanted us back again the following term. Other schools reached out. We did it again, and then we've sort of just kept refining it. That's where the education component comes from. But talking about a brand, I think the beauty of Livin is people get to be involved in something bigger than themselves, and I think that's what's really important. And they're not necessarily, I don't believe they're doing it for Livin, so to speak. A lot of people are doing it and tie themselves to things bigger than themselves to help them, if that makes sense. When we talk about community, I think a lot of people that love Livin and are a part of Livin, it's probably to support Livin, but it's to help them on their own journey to recovery and help them live a better life and help them be inspired so they can live.
I think something you said there, which is a really important narrative from my perspective, because it doesn't matter who you are, every single human being on this planet can benefit from help and conversation and the ability. Like one of my most stressful years I had personally was back in 2016, I think it was, and I made the decision to play golf. I wanted to get back into golf because I love golf.
Let's talk golf.
Yeah, super therapeutic for me. I love it. I used to play it a lot as a kid. And literally what I thought I was getting back into to get better, right? I was like, I'm going to play Mondays and Fridays. So I took Mondays and Fridays off. And what I thought was the quest to get my handicap back down to low numbers was it ended up being therapy sessions. So a friend of mine, I convinced him to do the same thing. So me and him would play golf every Monday and Friday. And I tell you what, no matter what was on my mind or stressing me out before the game, by the time I walked off that course, I felt like an entire new human being, right? Because I had the ability just to talk, right? Like I think people feel and you know, and this is via conversations as well. I'm not just sort of, you know, making an opinion here. This is from having conversations with a lot of people and also having another company that's in this sort of self-help personal development field. So, you know, I'm speaking from class here, is the ability. You think that there has to be a step-by-step process that you have to talk through and you have to say the right things to feel the right feelings. It's like sometimes you just got to have a mental dump of whatever you're feeling, right? So it's when you can release the emotion, right? When you can release what's in there, it's unlocked, and then it loses its connection to what it really is all about.
Yeah, mate, for golf, it's very similar for me. And what I find about golf, as you said, before the game of golf, you could be whatever's going on. There could be a war going on inside your head. But while you're playing golf, your only focus is getting that ball into that hole. So for me, it's mindfulness. You don't think about anything else. So that's another important sort of aspect about what you just spoke about. Yeah, you're talking to your friend and you're unloading and you're talking, but you're also not thinking about anything else other than getting that ball in that hole, which if we can relate that to whatever it is you want to do, and this is what we always talk about in our education, self-care is what works for you. For us, it sounds like it's golf, but for someone else, it could be running, it could be going to the gym, could be whatever.
Could be vacuuming.
It's that mindfulness and thinking about just that. You're not thinking about anything else that's going on in the world at that moment.
Yeah.
You're just doing what you love doing.
Yeah. And that's
It's really a form of, mate, sorry to jump in. It's really a form of meditation. You know, we talk about these, you know, yogis, and there's a lot of stigma around meditation, but I feel everyone's got their own form of meditation. For me, you know, I vacuum a lot. Case you know that, but I also do acting. Acting for me is a very therapeutic outlet. You know, nothing matters when I'm in that moment because I don't play much sport other than running.
Yeah.
But you guys might play golf. Some people might read. Some people might paint.
In saying that, sometimes I'll be on the golf course, bloody even more stressed than I am.
Really?
Why aren't you getting in the hole, you fucking stupid boy?
Yeah,
Me
Why
too.
did I do that? No, but
I didn't say I was a good golfer, but it's a different anger or
It
a
is.
different stress because it's tied up with what you're currently doing.
yeah, that's right. You're stressed at your inability to hit the ball straight instead of stressing about how you're going to pay your next bill, right?
Yeah.
It's a total different, it's a disconnection of sorts. And I think it's extremely healthy. And for me, you know, and bless my wife. So we'll, especially through heightened times of work and entrepreneurship over the many years, you know, back in 2013, 2012, I started a franchise, right? And it sort of just happened just because I thought, oh, let's do it because, you know, we had a big fitness audience. Everything was, you know, it was really easy to generate business. And I was like, well, let's just build a franchise because people all around the country want to train with us. So we did, and literally, you know, within a couple of days, I had a website up and I drove traffic to it. And, you know, it was the most stressful time ever because we had like over 170 people apply to be a franchisee like immediately. And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't thought this through properly. And I was super stressed. Like I was struggling to sleep at night, you know, because there was that element for me, and it was like, oh, I can't be seen as though this isn't going to work. Yep. So I have to do everything right. So there was this, you know, as a young boy growing up, I took the responsibility upon myself. You know, my mother and father separated when I was really, really young, when I was 4 years old, and we left Australia at the time to go grow up in New Zealand. And I remember it, I took the responsibility on my shoulders of being the man of the house, and I'll do everything that I can, and I'll never fail, I'll never let anyone down. And I carried that all the way through. You know, that's a big burden for someone to carry, you know, and there's a lot of people out there who are carrying burdens right now that they shouldn't be carrying, or they should offload to someone else to help carry.
Definitely. And it's just something, you know, we've been taught, and as you said earlier, harden up. That in that instance, that's that bad connotation of it.
Yep.
Just get on with the job.
Yeah.
I do believe we do need to learn and practice more resilience, but yeah, it's about picking your moments when to share these things, because we're not meant to carry all these burdens. The longer you keep them in, the heavier they get.
Yeah. You know, if you look at emotions, right? So if we look at there's three key, you know, happy emotions. So happiness, laughter, and joy. right? Those are, and love. So love, joy, and happiness. Those are expressive emotions that it's okay to express.
Yep.
You know, you can walk down the street and smile, you know, not too much because people think you're a little bit weird, but you can walk down and you're like, yeah, I'm happy. You know, you can have fun, and that's okay to express. But then you got fear, anger, and sadness, right? They're the suppressive emotions that it's, hey, you can't walk down the street and start crying because people go, whoa, what's going on with that person? You know, and you can't walk around here and start throwing computers. You know, like my boss back in when I first started,
Dick clicker.
Senior dick clicker. He would walk out into our factory because I was a cabinet maker by trade, and he'd walk out into our factory, and I routed a hinge on a door once, and I did it backwards, right, on the wrong bevel. Not a big deal. You could just literally one swipe of a plane and you can change it up. But instead, he came out and wanted to make a scene. He picks up doors, he throws the doors, he walks over to a pile of pre-hung doors that were about to be routed and put hinges on. He picks up like 6 brand new doors. There's nothing wrong with them, and he just threw them and broke them. Oh. And I was like, so he was expressing anger, right? Which that's not what you are supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And fear, like it's not a normal thing to express fear. Right, that's why there's horror movies, right, which allow us gateways to be able to express certain emotions, right? So if you're suppressing these 3 emotions, anger, sadness, and fear, they have to have an outlet somewhere. So it's that practice, and whether it's meditation, I actually have specific strategies that I utilize to express these particular emotions. So, for example, like to release anger. Something that I'll do is, you know, I'll either have a boxing bag on the floor, not a boxing bag hanging and I'm just haymakering and punching and jabbing, and because then anger's got a control of me, right? I'm not in control of that emotion because it's just sort of being let out of me in a very unorthodox manner where I've got no control. I'm just like, right? But if you actually do it in a very controlled manner, yeah, and you release the anger and you're in control of it and you go through the process, you can walk in to a session feeling so angry about someone or something, and you can walk out going, what was I even, like, there's no need to even be angry about that. What do you guys do, and what have you learned over the years of how people can, you know, really start to, you know, whether it's express or talk about or share their feelings? What are your suggestions?
What, in terms of looking after themselves?
Yeah, looking after themselves. Like,
finding
let's say
peace.
someone's listening right now and they're like, I'm just so stressed out and I don't even know what to do or who to talk to because I don't really even know what's going on.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, you know, is it's one thing for us to tell people it ain't weak to speak, but it's also one thing for someone to understand how to ask for help too. I think that's a big other part of the conversation that we'll start educating the masses on, but we can take it right back. I mean, it all comes down to what works for each person individually because we're all very different, right? So we can give people a whole bunch of tools to try, and you know, 9 out of 10 of them might not work. So I think if the 10th one works and it brings you happiness and makes you happy and it makes you feel good, keep doing those things. But I think everyone's on their own journey, and no one should ever compare their journey to someone else's. You know, your problem's relative to you, Brett, as it is to you, Casey, and myself. And, you know, we can't sit here and say your anxiety's worse than mine, and just because you've got stage 3 cancer, it's worse than someone that's got, you know, depression. We can't sit here and hold in our pain just because of those irrelevancies, if that makes sense. I think everyone's got the power to ask for help. But oftentimes it's the people that are, you know, closest to the people that are struggling who can intervene and ask or notice that they're not doing too well too.
Do you feel, and I'm gonna maybe put something out here that's quite edgy. Do you feel that in this current climate that, you know, anxiety and depression are just being thrown around as I've got depression or I've got anxiety, and to your point, Sammy, about the comparisons. It's like, well, I'm more upset than you, which means, well, I get more anxious about this than you, which means my anxiety is far more important than your anxiety. Like, what's your thoughts about that sort of narrative?
They're definitely words or terms that are thrown around. Like, you know, the weather outside's depressing. Those sort of terms.
Yep.
But what's important to remember, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, these are, or the list goes on, these are diagnosable mental illnesses. You have every time there's symptoms that persist for an ongoing period of 2 weeks or more. And they generally stop you from doing the things that you can normally do. So there is a feeling of depression, which is different or disconnected to actual depression.
Yep. More like you're stressed, right? You're really highly strung and highly stressed, and you're going through something that is causing that. It doesn't mean you have depression.
Exactly. Yeah. Unless it's diagnosed rolling period of 2 weeks or longer, and it's preventing you from doing the things that you can generally do.
And do you find depression generally has, like most people, their first reaction to it is, I don't know why I'm feeling like this, because there is that, right? And I've got this running in my family, so I'm very close to this entire conversation. I had a young brother who young gay boy. He grew up in a town. So I'm from Huntly. So if you know where Huntly is, small little town in New Zealand anyway. Little white boy growing up in a high school that he was very different than everyone, and the thing that I look back at is, so we were like 10 years difference, right? So we didn't really grow up together. So as he was sort of just going to high school, I left, I moved out, and I was working and so forth. So we didn't really get that sort of connection until later on in life. But he's gone through a number of things, depression, there's potential suicide and so forth. But I'm glad he's obviously been able to come out that other side of it, and obviously still battles with certain things. But for me, right, because there's another side to it, right? There's the person who's feeling this thing, and then there's a person who's not feeling it, and they're not sure how to act or what to do. And if people aren't equipped, or they're not very emotionally intelligent, or they don't really understand psychology and people and why they do the things they do. Like, I'm just lucky I'm a super curious human being. The question I want to know most of all is, why do we do what we do?
Yeah.
And that sent me on a quest of learning all of these different things, right? But as someone, when you got someone you love saying to you, or crying, going, I don't know why I feel like this, right? I mean, it's a very humbling feeling, because you're like, whoa. And for me, I want to solve problems, right? I love solving problems. I feel like I've been put on this earth to solve problems. That's why a lot of them are attracted to me, right?
And that's a problem.
And that's a problem.
Yeah,
right?
Which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. But when someone is, doesn't know what to do, right? Or someone's expressing, hey, they are sort of, I feel terrible. What's your advice to that,
I'll just say some things real quickly, Sammy. And this is a few things all in one. Comes back to education. And we say
Absolutely.
Education creates understanding. And with understanding comes acceptance, and with acceptance comes hope. So that's on that end. And that's for both people, the person experiencing it and the person around them. But there's some research that's been released that says you don't need to know what to say in a conversation like that. If your intent is of genuinely wanting to help that person, you can fumble and bumble your way through that conversation and not cause any harm, as long as your intent is of genuine nature and really wanting to help. But back to the topic of you wanting to fix people. This is something that's sort of ingrained in us as humans. We want to fix people, and especially as males, we're the fixers, and this is where women are really good. They just listen.
Yeah.
Our psychologist at Livin, his name's Luke Foster, and one thing that he always says, and it's something that he learnt early on in his career, when giving advice or when trying to help someone, it's best to remember that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we need to listen twice as much than what we speak. When we're talking and throwing out suggestions on how to fix these people or how to help them, we're not listening. And when you listen and you avoid distractions and all these, the things that we're pretty good at now, getting distracted. If you listen, oftentimes people tell you exactly what they need and exactly how you can help them. But listening is the most important thing, because sometimes that's all those people need.
Yeah.
And then point them in the direction of a professional and encourage them and empower them.
You're right. There's two parts to it, right? There's the listening, and you're listening to words, but it's like, are you actually taking that in, and when someone is engaging with you and they're actually feeling what you're saying, which opens up that next layer of trust, which, to your point, is hopefully they'll end up talking their way through it. Like my wife, for example, great listener, right? We'll go for a walk, and I'll be like, I need your opinion on something. And I'm like, blah, 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 sometimes like a fire hose. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, you're welcome.
You work your way through it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, exactly. Because we are all of us, we're all smart human beings if we allow ourselves to tap into that part of us.
Yeah.
Right. And what you said there was super important is you can hear words, but are you actually digesting what the person is saying without looking to reply or go, oh, you should do this. Oh, it's okay. Like a lot of people when they get, when you see someone crying, the natural reaction is to put the arm around them and go, oh, you'll be all right. It's okay. No, maybe it's not okay.
Yeah, true.
Right. And by you saying it's okay, you're, making them feel like, oh, is it not okay that I'm feeling this way? Right. So I love the concept of getting this education out there so people can actually just start having a conversation.
Definitely. And there's no shame in it either. And I think jumping back to vulnerability, plays a big part in it. Sammy spoke about self-care and what works for you, but also vulnerability. And it is okay to be vulnerable and put your hand up and ask for help or whatever it is you're going through. Because as humans, we're not islands. We are social creatures. So it's important.
Have you digested much of Brene Brown's work?
Well, Sammy and I were lucky. We go to, well, Sammy lives in America now, but we every year go to a mental health conference in America. It's somewhere different every year. This year it was in DC. She was the keynote speaker.
Yeah, cool.
It was amazing. We were front row seats. It was
nice.
And everyone got a free book.
Yep.
Brave of the Wilderness. But yeah, love her work. She's great.
Yeah, she's got a number of killer books. Daring Greatly is a really good one. I like that. She said then to vulnerability, right? She goes, what makes you vulnerable makes you beautiful. And when I read that line, I was like, I just got goosebumps there talking about it.
Mate, I agree. And I think that the vulnerability piece is a very important part, especially for males. And I'll be the first to say this, vulnerability, the word itself is probably thrown around more than ever these days without people really understanding what it actually means. I think everyone has the power to be vulnerable, but some people don't be vulnerable because they don't feel safe enough to be vulnerable. So that's where we've got to challenge people to become the safest person.
Or so ego as well, Sammy. Some people's ego won't let them be vulnerable.
Yeah.
They're scared that they'll be judged.
Yeah, all of that stuff. So it's really important that the people who want to, promote openness and vulnerability, they're vulnerable themselves. It's really important to be able to share with people on a deeper level how you're feeling, because it automatically builds what you mentioned before, Brett, the trust. Because without trust, vulnerability doesn't exist. And Brene Brown says that a number of times through a number of her books and her film on Netflix.
How good was her I was going to call it a stand-up, but it's the first of its kind that I've ever seen where she's literally up there 60 minutes doing a keynote and it's on Netflix.
Yeah,
it was killer.
I actually haven't seen it yet.
Mate.
My wife watched it and I'm just waiting for an hour where she's not in the bed beside me so I can watch it.
She's got she's really good with timing too. And I think where it adds a lot of value is humor, like being able to infuse humor and, the jokingness and playfulness around a topic that is deemed so serious, right, is a great step in the right direction too.
You haven't seen our Livin yet, obviously. A bit of humour around that. And it's just making it relatable.
Yeah.
So
that's the podcast?
No, Livin Well's our education program.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It is a very serious topic, but you got to make it relatable and you got to humanise it.
Yeah. And what we were saying earlier, it's what might be relatable to you might not be relatable to me. So it's how many angles can you come at it from? You know what I mean? Whether it's you got Chris Hemsworth, right, wearing one of your hoodies.
Yes.
Firstly, I want to know how you got Chris Hemsworth, but that is a powerful statement, right? And it is very personable led. So people out there who do have a voice, or everyone's got a voice. You don't have to have 1 million followers to have a voice. You could impact the 10 people around you or the 5 closest people to you if you decide to and go, you know what, the people who are out there who don't sort of self-recognize as I have depression or I suffer severe anxiety. I personally feel here for me that I have a duty of care to be able to at least help, and hence why I wanted to get you guys on here. I want as many people to listen to this podcast as possible, because I feel we have a duty of care to start making it, without you guys having to be the only ones out there sort of doing it. And obviously there's a lot of people doing this, but we as sort of bystanders to this crazy situation can and should be doing our part by just talking about it and sharing and just letting people know that, hey, I'm here for you.
Creating those safe spaces.
Safe space. That's exactly what it is, right? It's a safe space.
Yeah.
Awesome. How did you get Chris Hemsworth?
Sammy also said it. We need to lead by example. If we want to do these things, we need to do what we say. We need to walk the walk.
Yep.
But we got Hemsy, Sammy and good old Hemsy. That's what we like to call him. They actually acted alongside each other in a neighbours
No,
episode.
they didn't. No way.
No,
Bloody, that would be good, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah.
a friend of ours, another friend. He's a grip. I believe they work on the cameras on the big movie sets.
Yep.
He would wear Livin every single day at work.
Right.
While filming Thor. And Chris turned around to him one day and said, "Mate, that's a cool shirt." Our friend proceeded to tell him what it was all about. And he said, "Mate, can you please get me one?" So when our friend told us that, literally one of everything.
The whole merch range. Yeah.
And he just decided to wear it the first day of filming in the public and walked up to our friend who was wearing the same hoodie and said, "I hope this helps." And by golly gosh, it did.
Yeah, right.
Sort of. Sammy was all right. I was on my hands and knees for weeks packing orders.
Yeah, so there was the Chris Hemsworth effect.
Yeah, well, there still is. 3-4 years later, it's still...
we're using that image like it's bloody gold.
Chris, if you're listening, we'd love to give you some of our new merch.
Yeah. How good's the timing though right now, right? Like if we look at the sales from the merch over the last couple of months, you guys have been, having a ripper couple of months, right?
Yeah, well, it started off scary. Not scary, with nothing. Nothing was happening at all. And I think the government money came in and then the floodgates opened.
Yeah. Yeah, but what I love there is, and it comes back to this again, like we can be out there, maybe you're someone who doesn't want to talk about this, but you want to help, right? You can help by going to livin.org and purchasing this merchandise.
Definitely.
So you can have that Chris Hemsworth effect because you never know who you're going to be walking past, right? And that's the power of a really good brand coupled with an even better message, which is what I absolutely love about it. What I'm curious is I don't have a wardrobe yet full of all Livin gear, so we need to sort that out. But anyway,
Dan said that to me before. But further to what you just touched on regarding the message, I've got a card that sits on my desk. It's got $10 inside of it, and it will always sit there.
Yep.
It was from a lady. I think she came to an event once, and I just gave her a sticker, and she didn't pay for it. She didn't have money on it, whatever. She sent us this card saying, "I am so grateful for the sticker that you gave me that day. I left my house. I decided that I was going to end my life. The first or last thing I saw was this sticker. Livin, it ain't weak to speak." And that's all I needed to see in that moment because it stopped me from doing what I was going to do. I have 3 beautiful kids. I have a beautiful husband. So I just want to say thank you. And there was more to it. That's just me for story's sake. But something so small, but yet so powerful. And it empowered this lady it saved her life. A sticker saved her life. So, yeah, that's definitely the aim of our clothing stickers. Whatever you see, whatever, let's call it customer-facing experience there is, it's all for wanting to help save lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like an attitude. It's an attitude, We're hopefully trying to change behaviours through a merch, through a brand-led movement. And that's what's going to make this thing grow bigger and bigger, I think. So it's exciting. It's we're all very grateful by all the support that we get, and the same thing with you boys at Claxon with helping us with all of our social campaigns and stuff like that. So
I should say back to the sales. Sales pre-COVID were killing it. Then when COVID hit and people lost their jobs, it sort of went quiet for 2-3 weeks, and then thanks to Claxon, just went skyrocket. So
and that's just a testament again. One, obviously, we're clearly doing a great job, but more so it's the what you guys stand for, the brand that it is, the product that you're putting out there.
Chris's beautiful face.
Yeah, and we're leveraging Chris a lot. We need a few more Chris's. So maybe, Chris, if you're listening to this podcast, I know you probably are, in between filming your next Netflix series. What do you think of The Extraction?
Mate, I haven't seen it yet. I've got a toddler at home, a 1-year-old. So
right.
My time in front of the TV is limited.
Yeah.
Outside of Bluey, The Wiggles, and what else?
Ben 10?
Bill.
You watch some Ben 10?
No, not Ben 10 yet. But I'm watching Shooter at the moment, the TV show.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Shoot is good.
Yeah.
You're clearly
Extraction was
well
good.
behind in the
and billions is always a good one too.
Yeah, billions is good. Awesome. Lads, I'm going to do something that I haven't done on here before. Because I generally have one guest, but this question is I think even more fitting, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys say. So before we go, who wants to go first with the answer?
Case, you can if you want.
It's Sammy's birthday soon, so should we send the birthday
Yeah,
boy
I'll-
out?
Yeah, let's
I'll
set the
go
birthday
first.
boy
I'll
up.
go
You go
first.
first. Okay, so here's the question. So you're going to have a few more seconds to think about the answer. Sammy's going to get hit with a curveball. All right, so clearly social media is going crazy right now, right? Mark Zuckerberg is probably, you would have to say, pretty stressed out. He's arguably the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the world, and the job will have its toll. So he decides, you know what? He says, I'm going on holiday. I'm going to go for a 2-week holiday, and I need someone to take over Facebook. I need someone to manage Facebook for us. And they're like, who do we get? And they're like, Sammy Webb from Livin. He'll be the perfect candidate, right? So Mark slides into your DMs and he's like, Sam, I'm going on a 2-week holiday. I need you to look after Facebook for me. You're not going to get paid for it, but what I am going to do is I'm going to allow you to post one thing on Facebook, okay? You can post anything you want. It can be a video, it could be a text, it could be an image, it could be short, long, whatever you want it to be. You can post that, and I'll pin it to every person's profile so that every time someone logs in, our 2.6 billion users are going to see this message. What does your message say and why?
I would have to say, mate, it would be the image that we have in the office that says Livin, it ain't weak to speak, with Dwayne's head behind it. And why? Because that is why Livin started, and that is everything about what we do.
Cool. Case?
It's the same.
The same?
Yeah. It's big, massive. Yeah, it's huge. He looks over us, everything we do, and that's our why. That's why we started, and we continue to do what we do to stop people from joining him in the same manner. Something we didn't even talk about today was the ripple effect that's left behind. It doesn't stop; it just keeps rippling. I had a baby last year in April, and she never got to meet her uncle Dwayno. His sister had a baby as well last year or this year. Mate, my memory's cooked, but same thing. He won't get to grow up and know who his uncle was. So that ripple effect just continues on, and it just comes out in so many different ways at so many different times. So that's our why. That's why I would be there.
Awesome. Lads, appreciate it. Thank you so much. And anyone listening, make sure you get out there, get some merch. Go to livin.org. Spend up large. Whoever spends the most, I'll tell you what, here's what I'll do. If you purchase over $500 worth of merch, I'll give you a free 2-hour advisory session. How about that?
Oh, there you go.
I'll make you 10 times that much money in return. So make sure you do that. Take a photo of you checking out. It has to be over $500, not $499. Doesn't cut it. Has to be over 500. Send me a screenshot and we'll get that sorted.
Thank you.
Love your work, mate. Thanks so much for having us on.
Absolutely.